This time we have defensive coordinator Zac Alley. Questions for Coach Alley, Greg?
Zach, not that you guys haven't had pressure at other points this year, but 7 sacks this week, and I know Rich said you probably could have 15. So was the pressure organic? You guys obviously blitzed a lot. How'd it come about?
Yeah, I think we kind of went into the game wanting to make him uncomfortable, blitz and see if they could hold up and could find guys. So that probably helped the aggressive nature of the game plan as far as coming after him and feeling like we had an opportunity to get there, and we got home a few times, and we did miss probably 6, 7, 8 more where he's pretty shifty back there. Was able to get away and kind of get out. So obviously good to create negative yardage plays and get those sacks again.
Zach, you talked about making plays on the ball. It seems like Michael Coates is doing that at least once or twice a week. Yeah, how have you seen him develop?
Yeah, I think he did a really good job from a technique standpoint last game, just getting his head around, playing the ball in the air, some things we've been preaching. And, I mean, he about one-handed, picked one of those off early in the game and then made a nice play in the end zone on the other one. So, he won 2 of the 3 competitive balls there, which is always good to see. But, he's just consistent. That's what he does well, and he does it every week, the same kind of intensity and level of performance.
A guy like Coates, are you asking him to do different things that he did in Nevada? Go through that a little bit.
It's been so long since I watched his film from Nevada. Like, I'm not sure. I think he played a good amount of man, if I remember back on that tape too. But, ask him to do a lot of things. Play cloud, play man, match guys. So, it just depends on the week for the game plan of what that looks like. But he's a complete corner. I mean, he can do all of them, and does them well. So he's probably, excels in press man coverage. But, he's not like that's all he can do and he can't play other things. No, he does everything well. He's made a couple good plays on the ball and bail third and a couple flat routes. About picked one off in the flat last game. So I think he does all the different techniques we ask of him, fairly well.
Yeah, is anyone with his background who never played high school football before?
Probably not. Maybe there's a walk-on out there that, walked on a team at some point that, got an opportunity and made the most of it. But, obviously, going to the JUCO, that was kind of his high school experience, I guess, going forward. So, that might be a first.
Just curious, and use lay terms because it's probably getting over my head a little bit, but how were you able to compensate for their speed? Particularly they were hitting you early on the sweeps. How did you adjust to that? Because you can't obviously make your guys faster to match their speed. Talking about in the running plays a little bit.
Yeah, you try and set good edges and not let the ball get out. Don't make it go all the way to the sideline. Turn the ball back prior to it getting outside the hash, outside the numbers. And we did a couple of those, slanting the D-line, moving guys, getting an opportunity to keep the ball from getting on the edge and getting out there, with width. I guess I never felt like it stressed us in the game. I think they rushed for like 1.3 yards a carry. But, that's consistently what you want to do is set a tighter edge than the sideline's going to set.
I guess this isn't the fastest defense, probably not the fastest defense you've been. So you have to kind of compensate for that as a coordinator, right?
Yeah, you find ways to help them. How do you? I think you're always, whether you're fast or not, you're looking at ways to keep the ball out of space. Space is not your friend on defense. You don't want a lot of yards out there where they can run, freely. So you're trying to take space away and create tackling angles and, turn the ball to support players.
What's impressed you about your linebacker group over the last couple of games?
Just how tough-minded they are. Playing hard, and I think we almost were equal snaps last game as far as guys who were in and out, and you've watched some guys come on and play well near the end of the year, and we've been not completely healthy. We've been slightly banged up here or there, and so different guys have had to step up and take over roles, and it's good to see some of those guys perform, and I felt like last game they tried everything our game plan asked and demanded of them. They really stepped up to the challenge.
It also seems like Carrico's really stacked up 2 impressive games back-to-back with Houston and then Colorado. What's kind of impressed you or stood out to you about him?
Yeah, Reed's consistent. He is, and he's the same guy when he comes to work every day. His study habits, the way he is, the leadership qualities, the mannerisms, the just commitment to excellence is there. And so he's been a product probably of that consistency showing up now later in the year. And same thing, more reps in the system, you get better. And so I think that's just been, probably the last couple of weeks you've seen that come to fruition some.
How difficult difficult is it to prepare for a quarterback who in his last start threw for almost 200 yards, but then ran for almost 230 yards and can really do it all?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of adjusting the offense to fit who he is and to use his skill set and ability. I'll be curious to see how they come out and use him this week. He's a good player though. He's hard to get down. He's big. I mean, he looks like he's like 4 or 5 inches taller than everybody else out there when he's taking the snap. So we've got to do a good job of corralling him and hopefully limit some of the quarterback run game.
Do you look at his previous stops too, at what he did at Georgia Tech and Nebraska, or are you looking solely at Arizona State?
We look at everything. I'm trying to peek back, find what he's uncomfortable with, find things that he doesn't like, I guess you would say, and try and imitate or mimic those. But as a whole, obviously they're going to use him in ways they feel like fits in their offense and fits his ability here too. And I think they do a tremendous job of game planning and creating matchups for positive yards, I guess, on their side.
So when you guys were struggling a little bit earlier in the season, you mentioned that the offenses were getting second and short, third and short. It was easier for them to convert those first downs. That hasn't been the case as much recently where the defense is playing better. Outside of just wanting to generate, obviously, as long of a down as possible, what have you noticed that your defense is doing? What have you been trying to implement to force them into longer second and longs, third and longs, and not make it so easy to convert?
Yeah, I think the physicality of the game's been better. The last couple of weeks we've played, more physical and probably more confident and just in the calls and the things that we do. And I think our guys have tried to get to the ball, and that creates negative yardage plays when you get to, you hit them on a couple things and suddenly it's, second and 12, and then that leads to, third and 14, and then now it's hard to get that first down compared to third and 1 or fourth and 1. And so, I think you've seen that too, even the last couple weeks standing up on fourth and 1 and knocking them backwards and getting off the field. That's a big play. It doesn't show up as a turnover in the stat sheet, but you give the ball to the offense on the plus 42-yard line and they go down there and score. That's a momentum swing, and that's something we've got to be consistently working on every week.
Do you reuse stuff from, you faced a couple more quarterbacks in the past, do you reuse stuff or look back into some of those past matchups preparing for this weekend?
I think things come to mind always. This okay, hey, we did this against this guy. We did this against that guy. He was a great runner. What did we use that for? Hey, this is similar to, what we did against Auburn in 2016 when we were on the road down there on 3rd and 5. We should probably look at that. So you do some of those things. I think they come naturally to you as you're watching tape, and you can see patterns and things emerge. So yes would be my answer. It's a little bit of that, and then just what do we feel like this week works the best for this guy.
What have you noticed about Ben Vogel's development this season?
Yeah, I mean, proud of Ben. He's obviously, he didn't get here till summer, so he was at a disadvantage right off the jump, not having spring ball and all that. But dove right in. Has just continued to get better and better and better. And last game I was laughing because there's a period where I felt like Ben was playing really good, and then he needed a blow for a minute. Then Reed comes in and gets 2 sacks, and I was like, man, it's a good thing to have. I think they played about equal reps, so just developing himself into a starter level player consistently in the scheme, and you've just seen that as he gets comfortable in the defense. Same thing, reps help.
What can you say about Curtis? Obviously this past weekend going in, helping out the offense, but he's been very productive the last couple of weeks too for the defense. What can you say about his determination to help on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I think the guys like that. I mean, shoot, we forced the fumble. We scored on the pick 6 2 weeks ago. We've had some really good moments on defense, and nobody was as excited as they were when Curtis scored the first touchdown on offense yesterday. Our whole sideline, I'm talking to them, and they just gone. Everybody cheering, standing up, going to help out their brother, and that was cool. You like to see that, and that creates energy. And so he's just a guy that has the multiple, a skill set. And I said that before on how we use him on defense, and same thing's happening on offense. Give him an opportunity, and he's a guy that makes plays.
Zach, facing a quarterback this week that can not only scramble, but also they're going to run, straight out QB runs with him. How does that change your pass rush, your pocket pressure, that you've got to be kind of cognizant of the different ways he may run it?
Yeah, I think you got to do a great job of keeping contained and keeping him in the pocket, giving yourself a chance with just the, ways you attack and the pressures and all. You leave a void edge, on one side, he's probably going to find it, and get out, and he does a good job of that in extending plays, and then once he's on the move, it worries you because you're like, yeah, and he's fast and he's physical and he can throw the ball a mile, down the field. So it's a challenge for sure, and you just got to have our guys conscious of the leverage they're supposed to have when they're rushing, and don't cross the center if you're not supposed to cross the center. Don't, rush up the field and not counter back inside if he's, you're past the quarterback depth. So just trying to maintain the kind of that pocket integrity within the rush.
Common wisdom that says, hey, put a spy on it. Is that something that you will do occasionally, or you're for against that, or have the personnel to do it?
I think a little bit of both. I think you pick and choose your spots. I think the part of the problem is when you spy a guy, sometimes he outruns a spy. So you don't want that to happen because now you just lost somebody in the rush or in coverage, and now he's useless as far as going to get him. So it's a balance, I think, of both. Sometimes you want to change it up, and then other times, it's not really worth it depending on, the situation.
When Rich was going to use Curtis as part of the running back room, how involved were you in that process? Obviously, Rich is the head coach and has final say, but did he all come to you and say, do you think Curtis can handle this? And then kind of a second question, what are traits that you look for when recruiting even players that they could maybe play to both sides of the ball? Rich mentioned that's what he wants maybe going forward in those players, but what are some traits you look for?
Yeah, to answer the first question, Coach came in and just asked who we thought maybe could, play some of that running back role, who did it in high school, et cetera, because obviously we had a lot of injuries. We're trying to find some guys who could step over, and we felt like as a staff, there's a couple guys, and Curtis was probably our number one, and then he went over there and did it well, and so he got to keep the role, because he went over and did well. But we tried a couple of different guys out pre-practice that day, I think, but he was the best one. And then the second part of the question, in today's world, now that you're cutting the rosters down, and we don't have the ability, like the NFL, okay, they have half as many as we have, but man, if my third tailback gets hurt, I can go get another one. I can go sign a guy. I mean, even nowadays, the crazy thing is, you get 4, 5, 6 dudes injured, like you can't even go get a walk-on from campus. They won't let you, the roster's set, so it's just tough, and so that's weird. We were talking about the other day, it's not like, oh, the NFL, they, whoever it was, the Cowboys need a D tackle, so they traded for one. Well, we can't do that. That's not a thing. So you have to have more as we cut the roster size down. You're going to have 5 to 10 guys probably that can play both ways and give you some opportunity so that in the event of something happening that, the guy goes down or whatever it is, that they can do both. And then, there are guys you recruit who like, man, that dude's a dynamic receiver and he might be a quarterback and he can play safety and he can play linebacker and he can do all these things because he's a great player. And so you obviously want to get those guys because you feel like they're, doubly as valuable, because they can do multiple things.
Zac, for one question.
The consistency in what you kind of preached to your guys this year, and you said it a bunch, just do better. And you weren't going to change a bunch of stuff where, I don't know, maybe at low points you could have just tried new things and added and subtracted. Is that like the easier path, just sticking with what you're doing and not changing it to get to where you want to be, or at least closer to where you want to be?
Yeah, I think we're still not there. That's the first thing I think. We give up way too many yards and easy things we could still stop. But just trying to get the consistency of what we're doing and how we play, even more than, maybe the schemes and the thoughts of the different ways we're going to align, attack, blitz, all that. I mean, that's going to change week to week and year to year depending on who you have. But just the standard of how we understand the game, how we attack every single day of our work week, how we go into a game with a mindset of belief of being the most physically dominant team, playing relentless football, playing intelligently, and being able to execute. And so those are the standards and the things that, they'll never change. And the longer that, we have guys in the system that are here, the easier that becomes and the more instilled in their DNA that it really is.